decarbonization journey. The questions still far exceed the answers that we have. My name is Michelle Meinecke, and I'm the Director of the Energy Transition Dialogues at Gulf Intelligence. And I'm very glad to have two excellent speakers join me today. We may have one more, we'll see how we go. But before we delve into the main topic of the day, which is what is next for a circular economy, I'm going to ask each of the speakers to give their opinions on the stories shown on the screen now. These are the top 10 news stories from the week. Of course, in this field, that the news headlines are always busy. So we try to distill it as much as we possibly can, and then take a story from there and tell us why it matters. Why should we be keeping our eyes on that? First up, very happy to introduce Katerina Sarada, the founder of the SDG Hub Center for Sustainable Economies and Innovation. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And which story jumps out at you?
First of all, thanks, Michelle, for inviting me for the introduction. I would like to pick up this story on European green overhaul. So in December 2019 in Europe, we have adopted a new macroeconomic strategy aimed at a different kind of and quality of growth, which is European Green Deal. It's a long-term strategy to build the European economy in a more sustainable way, to become smarter, cleaner, and climate resilient, basically to achieve climate neutrality by the half of the century. Of course, this kind of strategy requires a deep transformation of the economy, and since December, European Union has been adopting a series of the documents to implement European Green Deal, including the Farm to Fork strategy, including energy revision documents, including the waste legislation, which has been revised as well. So there is a deep transformation going on, because there is a wide consideration, a wide recognition of the fact that we cannot achieve climate neutrality working on the surface and simply decarbonizing the energy system. We need a deeper action to be taken. So just a day ago, and this story basically is referring to that package, Europe has considered the proposal, the climate law, which basically will have considerable effects to all the imports coming to the European Union, and to the energy taxes and product-related taxes for the carbon-intensive imports. So being a second, basically largest economy of the world, with a huge market, European Union, with this climate legislation, is basically affecting the whole global economy. European green overhaul is not only about Europe, which is targeting to achieve climate neutrality, but actually is affecting all the economies across the value chains. Most of them, they're outside. So
and possibly as well incentivizing them to up their game, because they need to still be part of that value chain.
Yes, definitely. So there is a deep restructurization of European economy, which is targeting the transition to the circular economy as the engine of the new strategy. This will have also huge implications for other stakeholders, for other economies, because circular economy is targeting greater efficiency of the resources, of the materials, of the energy. So for it will have big implications for oil and gas industry. So
okay, Katerina, I'm going to stop you there, and we're just going to move on, because a lot of these comments you're making, which are fantastic, I want to have them in the broader context of the circular economy for those who are listening who might not be as familiar with it. But please keep those comments right at the tip of your tongue. Thank you very much. And please welcome as well Raj Jajaria, which I hope I pronounced correctly. Raj, you can let me know in a moment. The acting marketing and communications manager at the Gulf Downstream Association. Thank you very much for joining us, Raj. And which story grabs you, please?
Michelle, if you allow me, before I jump to a story, I would like to share with you an anecdote on circular economy.
Can you save that for once we've done the story, and then we're going to go on to the circular economy? So that would be great. Again, keep it at the tip of your tongue. So for now, just the story, please.
Okay. So I would like to take the story on India. And why I take that, this $200 million investment is in the 7 pilot plants, which are being planned to be established within this year. And this is a great initiative, but India is doing much more than that. Perhaps you may be aware, last year, the government had started a foundation of a huge world's largest hybrid solar and wind energy park, which is the size of a Singapore. And it will be generating 30 gigawatt of power. And they are trying to target in the next 2 years, by 2024, half of it. And the entire country's target to reach the solar energy and alternative energy and green energy power is 175 gigawatt from the current 90 gigawatt. So you see, there is a huge push for the green energy and transition. So I'm quite upbeat with India.
Absolutely, and that target, especially the one by 2024, is very soon. It's very, very ambitious.
Very ambitious.
And that's in a post-COVID world as well, economically speaking.
Yes, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So let's crack on with the main topic of today, which I'm so glad you're both so eager to get into. It's fantastic. So we're talking about a circular carbon economy and what needs to happen and when. And with a plethora of net zero commitments rolling in, especially including from the world's biggest economies over the last year, the spotlight is really shining again on a circular economy. Now, this is far, far from new, which of course you're both more than aware of. And in some areas, there are examples of circular economy already working, but considering the global decarbonisation efforts that need to be achieved, current efforts when it comes to circular economy, it can arguably be tiny in terms of scale of where we need to get to. So the potential is significantly underutilized at the moment. According to Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which has a wealth of knowledge on this topic, a whopping 45% of greenhouse gas emissions can be achieved for net zero goals by 2050 via a circular economy. So 45%, that's quite a humongous number. So looking at that and talking about that backdrop, Katrina, I just want to come to you and pick up again on where you're talking about the circular economy. And one of the figures that really stands out to us here is that with 5 key sectors, cement, aluminium, steel, plastics, food, could cut emissions by 3.7 billion tons by 2050. So that's the equivalent to eliminating all current emissions from all forms of transport. It's again, significant. And this would offer a $4.5 trillion economic opportunity as well. These are very, very attractive sums for anybody looking at decarbonisation and anybody being daunted by headlines that we're seeing saying we have already fallen behind. We have almost no chance of being able to catch up anyway. So how can these figures and how can this potential be made a reality? What would you like to see done this year to start making greater progress there?
I can pick up first, Michelle. So it's not a difficult question. Basically, we come from the definition of the circular economy, what strategies we need to activate in order to achieve the goals. And 3 core strategies which I would mention would be activate circularity by design, because most of the environmental impacts, including carbon emissions and material consumption, resource efficiency, is basically defined on the level of design. And as for European Union, there is a huge work on that level to develop better standards, better criteria for achieving better design of the products. So this is action number 1. Second is, from my point of view, would be the best starting from eliminating inefficiencies in the value chains, because this is what drives our emissions. This is what drives the waste up. So because in circular economy, the scale is not something that matters like in linear economy. In circular economy, coordination of the resources which is happening in the value chain is the core factor. And that's why we have an importance of the digital technologies which help us to pass the data along the supply chain about the product information, composition of the materials, possible recycling strategies. So focus on the value chains. And of course,
a lot of this is, Katrina, a lot of this is the theory of the steps to get there, which of course is extremely valuable. But do you feel that enough is being done to make that theory a reality?
Not, of course not. We are just in the very beginning. European Union, for example, in its circular economy action plan, has identified exactly those sectors that you just mentioned, because they have most impact, they are most carbon and resource intensive. So along these value chains, European Union has been developing the separate strategies of how to do that. So how to transit to the circular business model. how to activate the circular economy strategy, how to provide better information along the value chains. So there is a lot to do, and actually the main problem is actually the data, how to make the data in the supply chain and between the supply chains available. Mm-hmm. And we have to start now, because there is a massive lack of data, which is also preventing the investments. Because as you may know, the modern materials, they are quite complex. Even the producers, they don't really know what the material is composed of. So data has a crucial importance. European Union now has been working on creation of the European data space for the circular applications, exactly for activating the circularity along the supply chains. So we are in the very beginning, but there is no easy answer. We have to start. The work is huge. So I think the value chain is something where we really have to look at, given the global and globalized character of our economy. And the last point is, of course, energy. So we have to look at our inputs, where we should depart in order to provide more renewable inputs, both energy and both materials.
I want to come back to that, because you've touched on something that I want to bring Raj into as well. And you touched on the value of communication and the value of everybody in the value chain knowing what's going on. And Raj, the reason I want to bring you into that, obviously with your background as well, but I had a conversation recently with a metals company, and they were saying to me that we've got this big problem because our sales team who speak to our clients, and we're trying to get our sales team to communicate that we want our clients to leave the waste. We'll come pick the waste up for free because we're trying to instigate the circular economy or try and do something in-house. And the sales team just aren't interested. They don't want to do it. They don't want to have this conversation. And there isn't the deeper level of appreciation there that if they do that, then their company will become more competitive in a future environment, and overall, perhaps the sales will grow. So it's not a finger pointing exercise. It's just a very good example of how the levels of education along that value chain and along the operational chain needs a lot of strengthening. Raj, are you finding that a lot? Do you think that enough is being done to educate us all on the value of a circular economy and how a circular economy can directly link to economic prosperity?
Okay. So here I would like to first start with my anecdote. I'm very fascinated with the
You've been very patient. We'll go to the anecdotes.
Yes. So the story goes like this. In a Tibetan monastery, one monk went to the master asking for a fresh set of robes. And the master asked him, what happened to the old robe? He said, I used it as curtain. He said, where are the old curtain? He said, I used them as duster. He said, where are the dusters? He said, I have used those dusters as a wick in the lamp which is burning in front of you. You see, from the robe to the curtain to the duster to the wick, 4 transitions of the same product. That is the circular economy. And believe me or not, Michelle, circular economy is not a new term. It has been just made new. It has been part of our society and culture from the time immemorial. Doing more with less is the real heart of circular economy. How can we make people do more with less? That's the question we need to ask. And for me, if I were to give you 3 top philosophical or how can we implement it in our society, is that first of all, we need to make the awareness campaign globally. Globally, we need to make this awareness of doing more with less. And also we need to make consumer a partner of the producer. Right now, we are only focusing on producing things which are recycled, repurposed, and so on. What about the consumer? He is left out. Consumer should be made a stakeholder, equally stakeholder. And the consumer should also adopt a model of service rather than ownership. Today, we use a product and throw it. How about we return it to the producer and we take a service, we get it repaired. And I know that many companies around the world have started doing this as an offer. They start repairing your product rather than just replacing it. So that is part of the circular economy. And last but not the least, we need to establish a synergies. Now we are talking about value chain. this value chain is not strong because there is no synergy. We have competing people. People are competing into different industry at different parts of the value chain. We need to bring them together and establish a synergies. And then they will all get the value. They will all benefit from this synergy. Right now, they see this as a threat. One party sees the threat of the other. So these are the three things comes to my mind.
And that's very much the beauty of a circular economy, but also the greatest threat to it thriving is the fact that it is such a holistic concept. Yes. You know, it does truly require everybody to get involved in order for it to succeed effectively. We're going to go to a survey question, please. But just before I do that, I'd like to welcome Koen Radermakers, the Managing Director at Trinomics. Hi, Koen, how are you? Are you with us? Are you there?
Hello.
Yes.
So welcome. So sorry to be a bit later because I'm
coming
worries. From a very important meeting with the European Commission, especially on circular economy. So,
excellent.
So we are developing the Sustainable Products Initiative, which is one of the most important initiatives for the European Commission. And myself, I'm the project leader of that whole impact assessment. So it's really hectic currently with many things ongoing. And we are connected to 450 associations in Europe regarding that initiative.
Excellent, very good. Well, we'd like to hear a lot more about that once we see the survey question. If we could bring that up, please, and Koen, get ready because I'm going to ask you based on those results. So, a circular economy will be a key part of most nations' climate plans by late 2022. Do you agree or do you disagree? So it's a very optimistic statement, but there's been a lot more activity that we've been seeing. And perhaps that will start threading in when you've got the world's biggest oil exporter, Saudi Arabia, creating a circular carbon economy proposal that's getting support from the G20. Perhaps that is a sign that things truly are actively moving in the right direction. We know the EU is very busy in this space and that it's very much a pioneer in this space. So it's good to see those outside the region ramping up a little bit. So as soon as those survey questions ready, please pop them up on the screen. In the meantime, Koen, could you just take us through the project that you're discussing now and what the level of progress that it's at, obviously without revealing anything that you're not supposed to?
Yeah, I can quickly say something about it because it's important also not only for the European Union, but also outside the Union. Because if the European Union is going to set up a sustainable products protocol, so basically what are they doing? They are looking at the Eco-Design Directive, which is basically only focusing on energy-related products. And top-down, which is very different from other kind of pieces of legislation. It's a top-down decision. That means that the Commission is deciding what manufacturers have to deal with in function of circular economy. For the time being, it was only related to energy, and with the Sustainable Products Initiative, it will be extended to all circular initiatives that you can think about, because we want to go into the direction of a total sustainable product. And which means that if you're going to ask this to your manufacturers and to hold the value chain of people working on a product in Europe, it will also have an impact on importers. And that's, of course, a very important element because we want to create a level playing field, which means that also the borders will be much more followed up and enforced in function of what are going to be the sustainable criteria for all the products that will come into Europe.
Indeed. Well, I think you and Katrina should have a chat after this because that's roughly along the lines that she was mentioning right at the beginning. If we can just see that survey question, please. And Katrina, I'd love to have your opinion on this as well. A circular economy will be a key part of most nations' climate plans by 2022. Now, we're not talking just Europe, we're talking globally. And a surprising number agree to that. Do you agree? Do you think that that's in line with expectations?
I disagreed. And the reason is that we are working a lot on NECPs, so the National Energy and Climate Plans. And we have been evaluating them over the last 2 years, and we see that there is no linkage today between circular economy and the energy and climate plans that have been set up by all the member states. So that means that we have already a good view about what all the 28 member states are doing in Europe. And we see that there is currently no linkage. If we talk about circular economy as such, it's very fragmented. And that's one of the main problems that we see in functional policy making. It's only quite recently that certain member states have been starting with roadmaps. And as long as you don't have a clear policy agreement about what kind of roadmap you want to develop and how you want to implement it in your pieces of legislation, it cannot be linked. And for the time being, there is a total,
black hole
link,
in terms of standardization
between the two. So you have the energy and climate departments really trying to focus on their own footprint and developing a decarbonized environment, but it's not linked at all for the time being with circular economy.
Katrina, what do you think?
Well, coming also from the European context, I can agree, because we have to consider in Europe as a specific situation, because first, circular economy is quite context specific. But one of the reasons why European Union is introducing circular economy is to integrate and to make the market of the European Union more to build a truly single market, to build value chains which will be functioning within European Union. So it works upon many different things, not only energy. That's why, but this is why I see the reason of quite a slow movement in this direction. I don't think that we disagree on the energy issues. I just think that there are many other linkages which are still not set up. I would like to give you an example of the nexus of clean energy and the circular economy. So for you to see that actually on this very basic and straightforward linkage, we don't have a clear-cut policy solution. For example, renewable energy equipment that we have been installing for last 20 years in Europe, like wind turbines and solar panels. They are basically about to finish their lifespan. We have to do something with that. We do have requirement on the photovoltaic panels for the recycling, which basically preventing us to activate the circular economy strategies, because recycling economy is not circular economy. And for the wind turbines, we don't have the solution at all. So now we will have to start the second wave of installation, and we don't have the ready solution. And this is really a funny situation, because we are talking about clean industry, clean energy, which basically will end up in piles of the waste, energy waste, which we didn't have, we do not have, and we didn't come to the agreement what we do with that. We didn't activate, we didn't build the value chain for the proper recycling for that. So, but this is the energy aspect, which is basically.
But I think that example perfectly encapsulates why a circular economy is so deeply complex and how truly holistic it is. It's similar to putting a price on carbon, as a bedfellow. The complexity there on a global price on carbon is absolutely huge. Raj, what is your opinion on the results of that survey? And as obviously you're not based in Europe, I'd really appreciate more of a global view. Do you think globally that is overly optimistic? Do you perhaps?
Yes, it is over optimistic, and I quite agree with Cohen that this whole concept of circular economy is fragmented. There is no consistent policy. There are no global guidelines. There are no practices which can be implemented as best practice, and people are adopting it on their own. And I can tell you from my experience of the GCC, many of our industries are implementing it on their own, but these are not coordinated. Recently only, some initiatives have started in the UAE with the UAE Circular Economy Policy and Council being established, and also similar moves being initiated, but they are very recent and they are very preliminary. We have a long way to go. So
and also there's that risk, that lack of standardization. It's just made me think of a quick survey question. Now we don't have this written out in advance. This is just mine. I'd quickly like to ask you all, and I'd just like a yes or no. I'll ask you each in turn, and I'd just like a yes or no answer. And the question is, will the first movers who are essentially frustrated at the lack of broader holistic progress, who are trying to progress on their own and trying to be proactive, will they cause more harm in the long term than good? Because things will not be standardized? So that's the question. Cohen, yes or no?
No.
Raj?
No.
And Katrina?
I do agree, no.
Okay, so we're saying that it's better than nothing. So even if you're pushing ahead without a standardized system, Cohen, you're saying that's better than nothing.
Indeed. So you need these first movers to push forward the markets. And with all the know-how we have been building up regarding PV and wind turbines, we wouldn't have been where we are today. And today there are waste directives set up also and circular economy plans in function of recycling these kind of elements. And so if you look at, for example, the batteries directive at the EU level is really taking into account the circular economy elements. So without investing in PV, for example, we wouldn't have had the PV cells we are today. And the design has been changing a lot, taking into account the circular economy principles. And it will happen also with wind turbines. And so there have been now the new wave of wind turbines. They do take into account what do we do with our blades, how can we recycle them and so on. But 20 years ago or 15 years ago, this wasn't the case.
No, absolutely. And Raj, just on that more of a global picture, because we're going to bring the last survey question up in a second. So just before we pop to that last survey question, because the survey question relates to the US and China, so it's very much a global picture. And you're touching upon projects that are being done in the Middle East as well, obviously the historical epicenter of fossil fuels. How reassured should we be that such efforts are being made in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia? How meaningful is it?
Very, very meaningful. And I can tell you that in each of these countries of GCC, great push by the government and the leadership towards the circular economy and decarbonization. I'm hearing from my member companies, as you know, we have more than 60 plus industry members, including all the national oil companies of GCC. And I hear from them constantly how there is a big push to do energy management, which Katrina talked about leakages, and also Cohen talked about how people are not developing enough standards for the better decarbonization. All of this is being implemented. There are so many initiatives. One of our committee called Industry Trend Committee is, as we speak, writing a paper which is going to be published in a couple of months' time, where they are going to review all the technology and means to do decarbonization of a refinery. What are the ways by which we can decarbonize a refinery? These are all done by these people on their own. Nobody has told them to do it, but they want to do it because that's the only way forward. There is no alternative.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bringing up that last survey question, please. And I'm hoping that the answer echoes the proactivity that you're talking about there, Raj, as well. Will the circular economy be part of the new China-US climate cooperation? This was announced this week. It was on the cards or in the tea leaves as well, on the cards rather, for a while. And it was very much a case of seeing if it was going to transpire and the level of ambition as well in the climate cooperation, which in truth we still need to see if all the words translate into reality. So just with this, just a quick stat, I think, which really helps to give a background to those listening about why this is so important. Circular strategies can keep the planet on a well below 2-degree trajectory. We're aiming for 1.5, and we're very unlikely to get there at the moment, by cutting emissions by 2.8 billion tons beyond what is achieved by our current pledges. And it also, as we talked about before, the 4.5 trillion economic opportunity, that was just before you joined us, Cohen. Now, this is from the Circularity Gap Report 2021. If anyone has any time to grab a coffee and have a read, it's certainly worthwhile. Can we bring up the answer to that question? It's a very simple question. I suspect the answer should be in already. Okay. Katrina, what do you think?
I definitely think that it will be a part of the cooperation, because circular economy is high top on the agenda of all the developed economies. And Biden administration is trying to gain more leverage in the leadership that has been lost due to previous Trump administration. So I definitely think that this quite fancy concept, will be a part also of cooperation between the two. I have no doubt about it.
And Karen, do you think that we will be seeing this as a key part? Do you think it will be in the top 5 areas of what these two major, well, the world's 2 biggest economies and the 2 of the biggest energy consumers as well? Do you feel kind of the circular economy will be right at that level of priority? Karen, you there?
It was a quick question to me, sorry. So, okay, sorry, I thought you were asking Catherine. So, Trinomics is working a lot on circular economy international. So we have been developing the circular economy cooperation between Europe and Africa. We are also I participated in the World Circular Economy Council that was set up quite recently. And what we see is that the US is not very active in this platform. So if you would ask me, okay, which direction we go, I think there are more political and other issues that they do put much higher on their agenda than circular economy when they have to set up an agreement and cooperation with China. And that's the same in China. And so I was a chief economist in China for an international bank for a couple of years. And the Chinese way of working is very different from in Europe or in the US. And as such, they do develop circular economy principles because for them, it's also very important that they're dealing with their resources in the best possible way. But at the same time, if we are going to talk about politics and setting up corporations regarding climate, it's not high enough on the agenda. I was also a chief of a cabinet of a minister, and so I have a political background. And as such, I don't think it will be one of the key elements that they're talking about. In Europe, it's very different. If you see that the corporations that have been setting up by Europe with Asia, with Africa, they have been setting up a circular economy action plan and a corporation policy platform. And so there, it's really one of the key priorities to work on circular economy, but I haven't seen it yet happening in the US for the time being. It can come.
I think Europe's is unique. It's very much stands alone when it comes to this level of progress on lots of different areas as well, not just the circular economy. Raj, we're just talking about that. Raj, we're just talking there about the importance of about international relationships, and you'd say, of course, there's lots of progress going on in the Middle East that not being told to do, they're just cracking on and getting on with it. Do you feel like there will be a greater push from the Middle East out in terms of building more international partnerships when it comes to circular economy?
Absolutely. And I think this push will come from within rather than from outside. And by the way, to the answer of the last survey question, even I had said no. I wish, but I doubt. Because both of them have different agendas high up on their priority. China has got so many coal plants, and they are trying to open up more coal plants for the power, and the US will be focusing on tackling that. The US has got the largest consumer behavior. I mean, I don't know how are they going to implement the circular economy so soon. So I think I agree with point that these are some of the barriers to their implementing circular economy straight away. It requires a lot of other things. But in the Middle East, I can tell you that yes, there is a lot of looking forward to. I can tell you recently, NOGA has signed with Any Rewind a memorandum of understanding in Bahrain to use their technology for introducing circular economy. And also, they have been funded by the Clean Climate Fund 2 years ago to establish projects in Bahrain where they will be cleaning the water coming out of the refinery and oil installations to use for irrigation and develop an ecosystem where migratory birds can come and develop into a tourist spot. So these are some of the examples at a national level which are happening. So yes, international cooperation definitely is going to be on the card for the future. Okay,
excellent. Thank you very much, Raj. Thank you very much, Katrina and Karen, for joining us. We have reached the end of, we've actually stretched it by about 6 minutes, which is unusual, but I felt there was a lot to say. So thank you very much to each of you. And we'll be following up, and there'll be a lot more of this in the intelligence briefing, which is out every Wednesday. So please keep an eye out for that as well. Thank you very much, all of you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you,